All right, on the breaking news at this hour, it's 4:19 in New York, where we are. It's approaching midnight in Iran. We've heard a lot from the Department of War and from CENTCOM, from the IDF, about American and Israeli attacks on Iran, and how many battalions have been hit, how many naval vessels have been sunk. What about Iran? What about the Iranian strikes? So the hard data is actually a little bit hard to come by. Iran doesn't exactly publish what it's striking or what it's doing. And even the other countries, it's been mixed in terms of what they're intercepting and what have you. But you look at what we know from open source information, we at least get a rough picture of the Iranian attack tempo. And in the first few days, we was here on the red is the drones and the blue is the missiles. So the first few days, like over here on the drones, it was obviously really high, even for the missiles. And then we've seen a move down. From that point, where there were hundreds and hundreds, and the best data now shows that a number has gone down by like 90%, nearly 90% fewer strikes. But are they doing less with more is one of the questions. The Stimson Center, which tracks this kind of thing, does say there's some evidence to suggest the Iranian attacks have been more effective in the last couple of weeks. So we start to get into this period here, which is kind of interesting because the raw numbers are much lower, but the thing is, it looks like they're evading interceptors a little bit more that are designed to shoot down the munitions out of the sky. I know that, again, UAE, where I was, for example, they don't put out the numbers in terms of how many are in, how many are intercepted like they did in the early days. Blaise Misztal is with us, Vice President Policy, Jewish Institute for National Security of America, or JINSA. Welcome, Blaise. Thank you for coming on. So that was, let's just use this as a starting point, then there's a few other things I definitely want to talk to you about in terms of if this does drag on and there's no agreement, the ability of some of these Gulf nations to defend themselves as effectively as they did in the early stages of the war when there were more missiles and drones coming in. What would you say?
Yeah, well, good afternoon. Thanks for having me on. I think there's definitely a race going on between Iran and how many missiles and drones it still has and how many it's still able to fire. And the U.S., Israel, and its Gulf allies, and how well they're able to defend against them. I think the question is, who's going to run out first? Is Iran going to run out of missiles to launch, or are the defenders going to run out of the interceptors they use to shoot down those missiles? And it's definitely sort of a tense situation, and something that I think the commanders on all sides are watching closely. The advantage that the U.S. and its partners have is that they have an offensive capability. That is, since day one of the war, U.S. and Israeli jets have been going after trying to find and destroy Iran's ability to produce and launch missiles. And in fact, some of what Iran has done that it thought made its missiles more secure has actually been counterproductive. So you might have seen pictures of Iran's so-called missile cities, where they put these big warehouses of missiles underground, and they thought that by burying them, they were making them safer, harder to hit. Well, it turns out if you know where 200 missiles are stored and you blow that place up, then you lose 200 missiles. And even if you don't blow it up, if it's underground and you blow up the tunnel leading to the surface and you can't get those missiles out, you can't fire them. So they're as good as destroyed. And I think what you've seen and what's accounting for that 90% decline that you pointed out there is really that offensive ability that the U.S. and Israel have brought to bear in taking out Iran's ability to get these missiles out, to put them on launchers and to fire them. And I think that high tempo of operations that we continue to see to this day is about eliminating what is left of that ability. So how does that numbers game then affect these negotiations if they actually do happen? Yeah, so I think there's potential pressure on both sides from this numbers game. Iran is able to sustain pressure against Israel, against the Gulf, only so long as it still has missiles and drones to launch. If it's close to running out or close to running out of the ability to launch them, then it might know that its game is up soon, and it might want to negotiate while it still has that leverage. If the U.S. and their partners are feeling pressure that they're running out of interceptors, that they might not be able to keep up this defense for a while, then that might be a reason for President Trump to want to seek a negotiated settlement now. And both sides keep those numbers very, very close to the vest. We don't know, and so it's hard to tell who's feeling more pressure now. But certainly that offensive ability that the U.S. and Israel have give it an advantage. I would say
far more firepower, no question about that. But what about cost, where Iran is doing it on the cheap for $20,000 or whatever it may be for some of these drones? That theory that they could drag it out longer because of that.
There is certainly an asymmetry here in the cost, particularly in the drones, as you said. A couple tens of thousands, maybe $100,000 to produce a drone, millions of dollars for some of the missiles that we're using to intercept them. But at this point, those are sunk costs. Iran has the drones it has. The U.S. and its partners have the interceptors they have. Neither side is going to produce more of them in the length of this conflict. And so it's not really a matter of which side is able to pay more or spend less to buy more of these capabilities. They have what they have. It's a question of who runs out first.
All right, Blaise, good analysis. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate that.